Lee Min-ho's family just spoke about his relationship with Song Hye Kyo, and the Min Kyo fandom will never recover. For years the private world these two built stayed locked behind a wall so carefully constructed that even the people closest to them rarely let a single word slip into public air. Then, without warning, without a press conference, without any of the usual industry machinery, relatives of Lee Min-ho opened their mouths and spoke about the woman he married. Not in vague, polite generalities. Not in the careful language of people protecting a brand. They spoke with the quiet certainty of people who have watched a love grow in real time, away from cameras, in the ordinary rooms where the real work of a marriage actually happens. And the words they chose were so simple, so unguarded, so completely free of performance that the entire fandom felt the floor shift under its feet. Was it a calculated decision to finally let a little light in? Was it the natural result of a relationship that has become so solid the people who love them no longer feel the need to protect every syllable? Or was it simply the truth refusing to stay silent any longer? Stay until the end because the details of what they said, how they said it, what those words reveal about the depth of the marriage, and why the single family voice matters more than any red carpet appearance they have ever given are going to destroy you in the best way possible. Before we go any further, like this video, subscribe and turn on post notifications. Min Kyo is not just having a moment. They are living the kind of quiet, continuous intimacy that most couples only dream about. And when the people who have known Lee Min-ho longest finally decide to speak, you cannot afford to miss a single word of it. There is a specific kind of intimacy that cannot be faked. You can fake warmth. You can perform affection. You can simulate closeness with enough skill and enough practice that a casual observer would never know the difference. The entertainment industry runs, in significant part, on exactly this kind of simulation. Actors and public figures learn early that the camera rewards performed emotion and that the audience, most of the time, cannot distinguish between what is felt and what is executed with sufficient technical precision. This is not a cynical observation. It is simply the reality of a craft that requires the translation of interior experience into exterior expression, and which sometimes runs those processes in reverse. But there are things that cannot be performed, things that require a specific kind of shared history, a specific kind of private language, a specific kind of accumulated intimacy that you cannot build in a day or a month or a year, but that accrues slowly across time spent genuinely close to another person. When the family of one person begins to speak about the other with the ease and certainty of people who have watched the relationship from the inside, that is one of those things. Not the surface version of familial approval. Not the polite public statement expected when two famous people marry. The specific, dense, layered kind of recognition that exists only when the people who have known someone longest have watched that someone become quieter, steadier, happier in the presence of another human being over years of ordinary time. The kind of recognition that cannot be manufactured for cameras because it lives in the private observations of people who were never performing in the first place. That is what emerged. That is what Lee Min-ho's relatives gave the world when they chose to speak about Song Hye Kyo. And the words were instantaneous in their impact, unguarded in their tone, and completely luminously real. They spoke the way people speak when they forget to protect a narrative, when the truth arrives before the awareness of being quoted, when the thing that is true is so specifically, privately true that the pleasure of saying it overrides every other consideration, including the consideration of being related to one of the most private couples in Korean entertainment. Min Kyo fans heard the words in real time, and the fandom collectively lost its composure entirely. To understand what this moment means and why it hit with the force that it did, you need to understand what private language actually is and what it requires to exist, because the phrase gets used loosely sometimes in ways that dilute its meaning, and this moment deserves the precision of the real definition. Private language between two people is not simply a matter of shared references or inside jokes in the conventional sense. It is something more structural than that. It is the entire vocabulary that two people develop through the specific texture of their shared experience. Every relationship of genuine depth generates its own private language. It begins with the references, the specific phrases and callbacks that emerge from memorable shared moments, but it grows beyond that into something more fundamental. It becomes a shorthand for entire emotional registers. A single word or a specific tone of voice or a particular expression carries, in private language, what would take paragraphs to explain to anyone outside the relationship. It is efficient in the way that all deeply shared understanding is efficient. You no longer need to build to meaning because meaning is already there, already between you, already fully assembled from all of the time you have spent together. Building this kind of language takes time, real time. Not the performed time of public appearances and coordinated schedules, but the accumulated ordinary time of a shared life. Mornings, evenings, meals and silences and arguments and reconciliations and the thousands of unremarkable moments that, unremarkable at the time, become the actual substance of a relationship. Private language is the sediment of all of that ordinary time. It is proof that two people have been genuinely, privately, continuously present with each other in a way that public life cannot provide and cannot simulate. Lee Min-ho and Song Hye Kyo have that language. The family voice proved it, and the proof is not the fact that relatives spoke. Anyone can speak about anyone in a given moment. The proof is the specific quality of how they spoke, the specific quality of the recognition that underpinned every sentence, the unmistakable signature of people who have watched two lives become one in a register that was entirely private, entirely opaque to the public, and entirely natural to the people living it. Let's go deeper into the specific mechanics of what the family said, because the details matter and the details are where the real story lives. The comments did not arrive as a formal statement. They emerged the way the most significant Min-kyo moments have always emerged. In the margins of ordinary conversation, not at the center of a press event, not in the spotlight, in the space beside the spotlight, where the people speaking are not actively performing for cameras because their attention is directed toward the simple act of telling the truth as they have lived it. This is the space where the real Min-kyo has always been most visible, not in the orchestrated moments, but in the peripheral ones, not in the prepared responses, but in the unrehearsed recognitions, not in what the couple chooses to show, but in what the people who love them forget, briefly, to hide. The relatives spoke of quiet presence, of the way Song Hye Kyo has stood beside Lee Min-ho through seasons the public never saw, of the steadiness she brought into rooms that used to carry more weight, of the way he has become softer in the presence of someone who never asked him to perform strength. These are not the observations of people reading tabloid headlines. These are the observations of people who have sat at the same tables, shared the same ordinary evenings, watched the same private transformations happen in real time. The language they used was not industry language. It was the language of people who have watched a man they love become happier, and who are no longer afraid to say so out loud. And the fandom heard it for exactly what it was, the private world becoming briefly audible. The Min-kyo community has, at this point, an extensive and lovingly maintained archive of every public and semi-public signal these two have ever given. The careful distances on red carpets. The soft glances that last a fraction longer than professional courtesy requires. The rare, unguarded smiles that surface only when the private world overrides the public one. What the family voice added was something rarer still. It was the confirmation from the people who have known Lee Min-ho longest that the private world is not a performance. That the quiet happiness the cameras occasionally catch is the same quiet happiness that exists when no cameras are present. That the woman he married is not a public accessory but a private foundation. That is intimacy of a different order. Documented not by footage but by the people who were never performing. Undeniable because it comes from the only witnesses who were present for the ordinary years. Luminously clear because it carries no strategic purpose beyond the simple act of speaking truthfully about something that has been true for a long time. Now, let's think about what this moment reveals about where the Min-kyo relationship actually lives at this point in time. Because this is the question that the family voice opens most compellingly. And it is a more interesting question than it might initially appear. Relationships have different phases. This is not a controversial observation. It is simply the reality of how long-term intimate partnerships develop over time. The early phase, characterized by intensity and discovery and the specific electricity of two people finding each other and learning each other and building the initial architecture of a shared life. The middle phase, which varies enormously between relationships but which typically involves the deepening of roots, the accumulation of shared history, the settling of the relationship into the texture of ordinary life without losing, in the healthiest version of this process, the particular quality of feeling that made the relationship worth building in the first place. And then the later phases, which, in the healthiest relationships, represents something that popular culture tends to undervalue. The phase of deep knowing. Of having been present with each other through enough that the relationship has become genuinely irreplaceable. Of having built something together that could not exist without both of you and that carries, in every interaction, the weight of everything that has been shared. Family recognition is one of the primary currencies of the deep knowing phase. It is what becomes possible when two people have been genuinely present with each other through enough shared time and shared experience that the people who love them most can no longer pretend the relationship is anything other than foundational. When the relatives of one person begin to speak about the other with the ease of long observation, what you are actually witnessing is the evidence of deep knowing. You are seeing the visible surface of a vast invisible interior that has been built across years of real intimacy, and that has now become solid enough that even the protective silence of family has begun to soften. What the family voice revealed about Lee Min-ho and Song Hye Kyo is the visible surface of that vast invisible interior. And the quiet certainty in the words, the completeness of the recognition, the total absence of performance that characterized every sentence, suggests that the interior is vast indeed. Suggests that the private world these two have built together is rich and deep and full in ways that the public has never been able to access, but that, in moments like this one, become briefly, accidentally audible. What the family voice revealed about Lee Min-ho and Song Hye Kyo is the visible surface of that vast invisible interior. And the quiet certainty in the words, the completeness of the recognition, the total absence of performance that characterized every sentence, suggests that the interior is vast indeed. Suggests that the private world these two have built together is rich and deep and full in ways that the public has never been able to access, but that, in moments like this one, become briefly, accidentally audible. This matters to the Min Kyo story for a specific reason. Because one of the persistent questions that has circulated in some corners of the broader commentary around this relationship is whether the extreme privacy these two maintain around their marriage reflects the depth of the marriage or something more complicated than depth. Whether the silence and the careful management of visibility reflects a relationship that is full and real and deeply private by choice or something more ambiguous than that. The family voice answers this question. Not with declarations from the couple themselves. Not with staged appearances. With something more convincing than either. The spontaneous, unguarded, unmanaged evidence of people who have watched two lives become one and who are no longer afraid to say that what they have watched is real. You cannot fake that. You cannot manufacture the particular quality of recognition that appears when the people who have known someone longest finally decide the truth no longer needs protection. You cannot produce on demand the specific ease with which relatives speak about a marriage that has been lived almost entirely out of public view. The specific recognition that arrives when the two of you have built something the rest of the world has never been allowed to see, and the people who love you most can no longer keep it entirely to themselves. That does not work that way. What the family voice offered is real because it is exactly the kind of thing that cannot be made to happen. Can only emerge when it has already been true for a long time. And it emerged. Let's spend some time with the broader texture of what was said, because the comments did not begin and end with a single quote. There was an entire emotional conversation happening in the way the relatives chose their words, and the conclusions of that analysis are worth sharing here. They spoke of presence without performance. Of the way Song Hye Kyo has never needed the spotlight to be essential. Of the quiet ways she has made Lee Min-ho's private life softer, steadier, more complete. These are not the observations of people reading from a script. These are the observations of people who have lived through the ordinary years alongside them, who have seen the private version of the man the public knows, and who have watched that private version become happier in the presence of one particular woman. The second thing the careful listeners noted is the absence of hesitation. When people speak about a relationship that is still being managed for public consumption, there is usually a careful calibration in the language. Slight distance. A protective softness around the edges. The family voice carried none of that. The recognition was clean. The affection was uncomplicated. The certainty was complete. That kind of clarity only appears when the people speaking have already lived through enough shared time to know that the relationship is not a performance that might collapse under scrutiny. It is a foundation that no longer needs to be protected from the light. Then the words became public. Lee Min-ho's relatives spoke on the relationship with Song Hye Kyo in the quiet, certain language of people who have watched it grow from the inside. And the world happened to be listening. That is the whole story. And it is enough. It is more than enough. It is, in its smallness and its realness and its specific, accidental, luminous intimacy, the clearest evidence yet that the private world these two have been building is not only real, it is vast. And for one brief, public moment, the rest of us were allowed to hear the edge of it from the people who have known it longest. The fandom felt it immediately. The collective loss of composure was not about celebrity gossip or the thrill of a rare public confirmation. It was about recognition. The recognition that two people who have spent years protecting something precious finally allowed the people who love them most to speak a single unscripted truth about that protection. The recognition that the depth was never in question. Only the visibility was. And now the visibility has arrived, not as a performance, not as a strategy, but as the quiet, certain voice of family who decided that the woman Lee Min-ho married deserved to be spoken of with the same ease and affection that has always existed in private. There is a reason family voices hit this hard when they come from people who have been this careful. Because the care itself is part of the intimacy. The years of choosing silence were not absence. They were protection. They were the deliberate construction of a space large enough and safe enough that when the people who loved them most finally spoke, the words would carry the full weight of everything that had been kept inside it. Lee Min-ho's relatives did not casually comment on a celebrity marriage. They opened a door that had been locked for a reason, and they opened it only wide enough for the truth to step through. That is why the moment destroys in the best way possible. Because it is not the beginning of something. It is the evidence of something that has already been whole for a long time. The private language was already complete. The deep knowing was already established. The ordinary mornings and the ordinary evenings and the thousands of unremarkable moments that become the actual substance of a marriage had already done their work. All that remained was for the people who have watched it longest to say, simply and without performance, that what they have watched is real. They said it. The fandom heard it. And the Min Kyo private world became, for one luminous second, briefly, accidentally, beautifully audible from the only voices that were never performing in the first place. The way the relatives spoke of Song Hye Kyo was not the language of people approving a public match. It was the language of people who have watched a man they love become more himself in the presence of someone who never asked him to be anything other than who he is when the cameras are off. The way they described the quiet strength she brings was not the language of people reading from a press release. It was the language of people who have sat through the ordinary years and noticed the difference she made in rooms the public will never enter. The way they allowed affection to color every sentence was not the language of people managing a narrative. It was the language of people who have already lived the truth long enough that protecting it no longer feels necessary. Later, when the comments circulated and the fandom began the careful line-by-line analysis that has become their specialty, the same conclusions kept appearing. The recognition was real. The affection was real. The absence of hesitation was real. The entire sequence was the accidental audibility of a daily life that has been happening out of sight for years. And the fact that it came from family of all sources only made it more powerful. Because family is the last layer of protection. When even that layer softens enough to speak, the foundation underneath must be solid beyond any remaining doubt. Lee Min-ho's family spoke on his relationship with Song Hye Kyo in the quiet, certain language of people who have watched it grow from the inside. And the world happened to be listening. That is the whole story. And it is enough. It is more than enough. It is, in its smallness and its realness and its specific, accidental, luminous intimacy, the clearest evidence yet that the private world these two have been building is not only real, it is vast. And for one brief, public moment, the rest of us were allowed to hear the edge of it from the people who have known it longest. The fandom will keep returning to the words. They will keep pausing on the exact phrases that carry the most weight. They will keep replaying the tone of certainty that underpins every sentence. They will keep analyzing the way the relatives spoke of Song Hye Kyo not as a public figure but as a private presence who has changed the texture of ordinary days. And every time they do, they will be looking at the same thing, the audible surface of a vast invisible interior, the proof that two people have been genuinely, privately, continuously present with each other in a way that public life cannot provide and cannot simulate. That is the gift of this moment. Not the comments themselves. Not even the affection or the certainty. The gift is the reminder that the private language is still being spoken, still being lived, still being protected, and that every once in a while the people who love them most allow the rest of us a single unscripted second of proof that it is real. The family spoke. The truth was simple. And for one luminous second, the Hye Kyo private world became briefly, accidentally, beautifully audible.